Welcome to Dear Sandy. I'm Sandy Galef, a member of the New York State Assembly, representing parts of northern Westchester and parts of Putnam County. And today we're going to be talking about the new New York law for family leave. And it really has been a very exciting year in Albany. And as many of you know, I had a town meeting on the pros and cons of whether New York State should adopt family health and medical leave program in our state. And we had a very good debate on it, and I've asked the person who was one of the people that was on the side of let's do this, Eric Williams, to come. And I'm so glad that you're here, Eric, and I enjoyed having you on our panel.
Great, thank you for having me today.
And you are the campaign director of the New York Paid Family Leave. And I know at the time that we had the forum, I had really not done the whole calculation of my district, how people felt about it, but we polled my newsletter questionnaire, and actually about 73% said that they were in favor of this. And this was, these were responses that we got from January through March. So, you know, I was very pleased that we were actually able to get this done this year in the budget, which is great.
That's great. And those numbers are very much in line with folks around the state, where you see 80% of New Yorkers really being in favor of willing to pay a small amount every week to be able to access 12 weeks of paid family leave.
Right. Well, we've had on the books on the federal level, I believe it's the federal level, that we have had 12 weeks of family leave, that somebody could at work say, I'm going to take 12 weeks off. But what was the problem with that?
Yeah, so the Federal Family and Medical Leave Act is 12 weeks of unpaid time off if you work at a company of 50 employees or more. So that covers 60% of the workforce in the country. However, if you think about how long can you go without a paycheck? Can you go 12 weeks without a paycheck? That's where you really get to see why that's an unworkable system, and why almost every country in the world has some form of paid parental leave or paid family leave, because they see that having some kind of wage replacement during that period is crucially important for people being able to access the benefit.
Right. Well, I guess it's true. If you're a person that comes from a family with means, or perhaps have a spouse that is working and getting paid quite a bit of money, I suppose you don't maybe necessarily think about it. But if you are an average New Yorker, or a lower income New Yorker, and you have this job and you're having a baby, or you're having a family member that is very, very sick, you probably can't afford to do that. So it just pushes you back to work, right, before you really should be. Right.
And there's, for women who give birth, there's a physical recovery time that's necessary, and especially depending on the type of work, if there's any kind of physical activity involved, it's really tough for the women going back to work too early. There is that critical recovery time, but also the bonding time, which this new law allows, so that you are able to breastfeed longer, spend more time bonding and caring for a child. You also save money on childcare costs, so that you or one of the parents can spend time at home with the child in those early few months.
And as you said before, other countries have been doing this for a while, where they had a requirement that you would get some of your pay during that period of time.
Yeah, almost every country except for the United States and Papua New Guinea offer paid maternity leave. So it's not exactly the same, but at least some benefit for new mothers. But almost every country in the world has at least maternity leave. Almost 100 countries have paternity leave as well. So this new law in New York covers both men and women for the birth of a new child, as well as caring for a seriously ill family member.
Or I guess adopting a child too would be covered under that.
Yeah, adopting, foster care, and so those other occasions are covered by this as well.
Right. Well, I know in New York, I mean, We've actually been talking about this for a long time. There has been legislation since I've been in the Assembly. Kathy Nolan had introduced as Assembly member. What year was that? Do you
1999.
think? 1999.
So this issue's been around for quite a while, and we've had people working on it around the state to try to build the momentum and the interest and the ability to get it done. It's been a very popular issue for quite a while, but it's as we mentioned, the numbers of people who support, especially the program that passed, that it's a wildly popular program, and I think it's just that we've had to get it to a point where it's kind of a common thing that people talk about. People can, almost everybody goes through these types of life events. They have children, they have to care for a sick parent or a sick family member, and so being able to encourage people to talk about it and recognize that the way that the system currently is, with only 12% of workers across the country having some form of paid family leave through work, that we really needed a solution at the state level and eventually at the national level.
When you talk about some having it through work, so there are some businesses that on their own decided, yes, they have to do the family leave, but they would pay for it.
Yeah, and one of the great things about this program, so some companies provide paid family leave as one of the benefits, as part of the benefits package, and the great thing about this program that we've passed is that it's an insurance program that employees pay for through small weekly contributions of about $1, and that goes to allow the insurance company to pay for that employee while they're out on leave, and saves the employer money during that time period that they can use to cover the work while that employee is out, either through paying overtime or paying a replacement worker for that period. So it's really
let's go back on the so all of employees will now contribute up to $1 a week.
Yeah.
Into I view it almost like an insurance plan, because I mean many of us get insurance for lots of things. Well, we have to for automobile, we do for houses, we might have long-term care insurance, we might have some other things. So this is just another one, thinking that I'm certainly not going to have a baby, but I may have a family issue that comes up,
right.
And so if I'm paying $1 into it every week, then when I'm not working, I'm still getting a certain percentage, and we'll talk a little bit more about the bill, but get a little percentage of your weekly salary back. That's how it works.
Right. And as I said, the insurance company pays you while you're out on leave, and leaving the employer doesn't have to pay anything out of pocket. For this program. So it makes it really accessible and easy for small businesses to comply with as well. And those businesses that already provide paid family leave, this will supplement whatever they want to provide. So a company that wants to provide, let's say, 100% of a worker's salary while they're out can make up the remainder. And there is, and we'll probably get into this in a little bit, the percentages of your wage and the cap. But the company can make up the remainder if they choose to. And that's something that they'll have to consider over the next year or so as this program comes into the implementation date.
So it doesn't go into effect until what, January?
Yeah, it's January 2018.
Right. So it's taking a little while, and the reason you think for that is the insurance companies?
Well, New York is a somewhat complicated ecosystem compared to other states, and and most companies and employers in New York use private insurance rather than the state insurance fund. So I think that could be part of the rationale for why they wanted to have a longer implementation date, to allow everybody the time to adjust and create the systems, create a well-functioning program at the state level that really works well once it's implemented and starting January 2018.
So people watching this show shouldn't go to their bosses and say, "I'm going to."
Not yet.
I have family paid leave. They can't say that yet.
Yeah.
But
not yet, but soon.
But soon. Okay. So about how much, I know when we were negotiating the bill and talking about the bill for a number of years. but finally got to it. I think the governor had originally suggested if you worked 4 weeks for a company, it would start in, and then there were others who suggested a month, and I think we ended up going to the 6 months. You have to work for the business.
Yep. So the eligibility period before you can take the benefit is the way the law was finally passed at 6 months. So you have to work at the same employer for 6 months before you're able to take that benefit. So that helps the company. Helps create some attachment to the workforce, to the employer, both between the employer and the employee, and makes it easier. If you were going to leave for 3 months on the 12 weeks of paid family leave after working there for 4 weeks.
They don't really know who you
tough.
are yet.
But when we had originally conceived of the program, we wanted to keep it as administratively similar to the existing temporary disability insurance program, which covers off-the-job injuries, including recovery from pregnancy. And so just as that pregnancy recovery just happens to be in the temporary disability piece, but that program is set, you're eligible for those benefits after 4 weeks. So our original bill just didn't include any changes to that.
So you've been with a company now of 6 months, and if you decide to take leave, and the first year though, it's a gradual program. I think as we've done many things to get people into it and have the monies to be able to afford to do the program. So the first year, how much salary would you be getting back?
Right, so starting in January 2018, you will be able to get 50% of your own average weekly wage up to a cap of 50% of the statewide average weekly wage. And to provide some context, the statewide average weekly wage was $1,266 last year, and so you can calculate it there as we go up. So this program phases in over the course of 4 years, up to 2/3 of your own wage, up to a cap of 2/3 of the statewide average weekly wage.
Right. So you'll never get 100%.
That's
and
right.
I guess the rationale for that too is you want to encourage your employees to come back.
Yeah.
I suppose. I don't know what the rationale was, but
right, and 2/3 kind of hits in the realm of what other states in the country have done. California, New Jersey, and Rhode Island all have had a paid family leave program for at least several years. And so we're kind of falling in line on that with other states. And internationally as well, countries range in the wage replacement anywhere from about 2/3 to 100%.
So why are we so slow? I mean, I guess if we had adopted it a long time ago, then maybe we would have been one of the first. But we're following suit behind other states.
Right. When California's had it for 12 years.
Right.
So it's that. If you think about that process even being relatively slow to get to a point where New York's passing it this year and implementing it in about a year and a half.
Do you think now that New York has passed it that a lot of other states are going to follow? Do you? Or?
Absolutely. There's a tremendous momentum on the national level. 20 plus states have introduced bills around paid family leave. Many states are close to passing something, hopefully in the next year. And there's momentum at the national level as well. Our own Senator Gillibrand has introduced a bill for paid family leave at the national level. But one of the things that's critical to issues like this is to build the momentum in a way state by state, really having states take the lead and having states on some level do some experimenting with the program and try to find the right combination of pieces that work the best. And so that's why you see some states, well, not necessarily intentionally, but every state has a little bit of different priorities in terms of how they wanted to put together their paid family leave program.
One of the things that came up, I was sitting with somebody at a dinner, and he was an owner of a business, and he said that, and that was before there would be paid, but he was saying that one of his employees takes Fridays off all the time, and I'm assuming that it's probably for their own health care or one of their loved ones maybe is getting chemo treatments or whatever. But it doesn't really have to be taken off all at one time, I don't think. I think you can you can make some decisions about that.
Right. And for family care especially, that was a very important component. The intermittent care needs was an important piece. So you could have a situation which you're caring for a spouse or a parent who needs to go to chemo treatment, for example. Maybe that's once a week, maybe it's every other week, maybe it's multiple times a week. But you don't have to leave the workforce completely during that time necessarily. And frequently that helps employers be able to manage that process a little bit better, because you still have your valued employee there, but on a not 100% of their time. So it makes it a little bit easier to manage and spread the work around, rather than that employee being gone for a more significant period of time all at once. But that's what you see frequently for new parents, is taking the full amount at one time. But one of the really great things about this program as well is that if you have two parents, you could even spread the time out, where you have one parent home for the first 12 weeks and then have the other parent home for another 12 weeks. So you're actually talking about being able to provide,
6
be
months
home with a child, have spreading that out over 6 months, or whatever combination you feel is right for your family.
Does an employee have to get not permission, but they have to work out the arrangement with their, I would assume, with their employer?
Yeah, and typically that's what you see even now with the unpaid version, or trying to manage. Right now a lot of people use a combination of vacation time and sick time, and whatever kind of leave they get through work. And so you'll see them work it out with their employer, because it's kind of a back and forth. Employees and employers both need each other, and so there's incentive for them to work together and try to figure out what works best. For having a child, your employer can know that fairly long in advance. So there's time to plan. There's time to make adjustments and plan that out in advance. For family care, sometimes those things happen more immediately. And so you might get a call and need to be gone the next day or a few days later. And for those types of instances, there are protections on the employer side with proof, like needing proof of caring for a sick family member.
Right, so that they could get doctor's prescription or whatever to know where it's happened. Well, I think it's great, but even at our town meeting, we had some panelists that were not in favor of it, basically coming from the business community. And I know, there were compromises as it went along, and you were advocating on one side and they were on the other, and I think they were just concerned, I guess, that they might have to hire. I think generally they felt it's important for employees to feel good and to think that their company that they work for cares about their personal life and what is going on, which is important. But I think that some of them felt that they might have to hire somebody else, so that's going to cost more money. It may depend on the type of business we're talking about.
Yep. Many businesses have a different way of operating. They're a different composition of employees. This kind of builds into the existing systems and existing infrastructure that small businesses would already comply with. However, in those instances, one of the things that's really interesting is that, employees have babies, they have care, family members they need to care for. These things are happening already and happening with their employees. And so how do they deal with it now? This creates a mechanism where employees are able to be out, financially able to be out, where they may have taken less time or not taken that time. So part of it is prioritizing those critical moments in your life when you have children or need to care for a seriously ill family member, making sure that's a priority, but that your employees have those financial means to do that. So on the employer side, though, we've talked to many employers as well who want to offer this program.
Right, and
they're really
many
excited
do.
Because their employees have the same life events, but smaller businesses especially don't have the means to provide paid family leave as a benefit.
Right.
So having this insurance program allows employees to contribute a small amount weekly and be able to take the benefit when they need to.
Now, can anybody opt out of this in the sense of not putting money into the program? I don't think so.
No,
right? Yeah.
it's as with many kind of social insurance programs, it's important that everybody pays in because you don't know when you are going to need it. And also, if you could opt in and opt out, you could, for example, opt in, a year or two before you have children, and then opt out again after that.
Right.
So there's some, not quite, not good incentive systems there if there's an opt-in, opt-out option. However, other types of employees or other types of workers like independent contractors can opt in because we still feel like, there's a movement in the economy, or there's a lot more jobs in the gig economy that really should be able to access this type of benefit. But they do have to be in the program for several years before being able to access
So
benefit.
they'd have to specifically opt in and say, I want to do this. But the majority of people, though, in January of 2018 will start to see on their salary stub a little line, which I don't know what it's going to say, but paid family leave or whatever it's going to pay.
That's what we, that's what we in the state and government need to figure out, how exactly these pieces fit together in terms of implementation and how the benefits get taken out.
So what do you do now? Now that we may even go back to how you ever got this done, working on this for a long time with you. Well, let's talk about that. You had a coalition. Have you personally been engaged since 1999?
No, I came on board for the last 2 years, and there was a really strong push over that period to build a strong coalition of both organizations around the state representing a diverse range of issues, including early childhood development, healthcare, senior care groups, labor organizations,
Actually,
workforce
AARP
issues.
was when you talk about that, they were very much out there walking the halls of Albany on this one. Yes.
Right, absolutely. They were a great partner to have in this fight to get paid family leave done. So we had 300 organizations involved around the state, as well as tens of thousands of voices of people all over the state saying, calling their legislators, sending them an email, signing a petition in favor of paid family leave to really show the groundswell of support around this issue as well, and to show that the time has come, everybody's excited to get something done, and that we really need to find a solution. So we're glad that in the state budget this year, we were able to get this policy done.
Right. It was amazing, actually, to have it in the state budget. I didn't even think it would ever appear there, but maybe that was the force that really got it done. I know the governor was very behind it, so that was also helpful. Yeah,
absolutely. He had a very personal story about caring for his father, former governor, and that was a very interesting way and a very personal way for him to show why this is so important. So in that case, he was able to spend some time with his father at the end of his life, but not all New Yorkers are able to do that.
Right.
And not all New Yorkers have access to that type of leave. So that's why it was so important to get that done. And it was really good to have him as that voice and that personal story, because we've seen that, as I said before, many people, if not almost everybody, have these experiences in their life, and they have a story about having to go back to work too soon, or a father not having access to any paternity leave to spend time with a new child, and having to work through that whole period.
Right.
And so that's why it's important to have messengers on this issue that are diverse. And that's, we saw that in our coalition as well. We've had health professionals saying 12 weeks of leave is really important for bonding with a new infant, for breastfeeding, for reduced
and that helps
postpartum
with the
depression.
Health and all the health that comes along with that in the long run.
Yeah, and so we had a diverse set of voices calling for paid family leave. And that's one of the things that was really interesting about this coalition and this campaign was everybody was coming to this issue for different reasons, but we were all focused around the same vision and the same need for this policy.
Right. Well, it was really, really a stunning victory. So now that you won, and you have some time, months, a year and some in between, what do you do as an advocate?
Right. So part of what's coming in the future is that on the state level, they need to figure out the actual policies, procedures, how this works in a logistics sense, because the law only goes so far. They actually have to figure out the details. So that's coming up. But also public education is a hugely important piece of this equation. And with the implementation date in January 2018, we're going to be working on educating the public that this benefit's coming, and then once we pass that date, making sure that everybody's educated that they have access to this. This is something they can get through their employer, and that they should ask for it. You know, there's also a lot of education of human resources professionals and business owners as well, so that they can know how to properly comply with this law. So we need to do some work on both sides, educating both businesses and employees.
That's true. So you would go to some of our large business groups and so on if they need any training for their all the businesses in the community. That would be a very good thing.
Yeah.
So do you have another project coming next, or is that going to be the project of the future?
Well, I feel like this is a pretty big thing. One of the other things that we had looked for in Assemblymember Nolan's bill was increasing temporary or modernizing temporary disability insurance, which, as I mentioned, one of the pieces covers recovering from pregnancy. And so that's an important part of the equation of early childhood care and recovery from pregnancy. And so we're kind of looking at that also as an important piece that was missed, that was left out of the final proposal for paid family leave. But there will be other issues, as well as primarily focusing on public education around paid family leave.
Right. No, I'm sure there will be, because as a government, it was all about compromise. It was us having a bill that we passed on many times in the Assembly. I don't think the Senate had, but then the governor put it in their budget.
Yep.
And it was different than the Assembly's, and we hadn't yet heard about the Senate position. So it was trying to get all these entities together, 150 Assembly members, 63 senators, and a governor, and it was a compromise. So you don't get everything that you want in a compromise.
Right. Oh, absolutely. And we were, compared to other states that have passed paid family leave, New York's paid family leave policy is much longer and more robust. And so we're very excited to hopefully set a new national standard as well by having 12 weeks of leave. That's also one thing that I hadn't mentioned yet is the job protection aspect, which allows people the right to return to the same or equivalent job.
Yes.
And I think that doesn't maybe get talked about as much because people assume that would be the case.
Right.
Whereas if we weren't able to include that provision in the new law, employers could let someone go. You'd be able to take the benefit, but you may not have a job to come back to.
Right. We're not going to let that happen.
Right. And that part's hugely important because you want to know that you have a job to come back to. It's tough for you to rationalize taking the leave if you don't know that you will have a job. And especially with a new child or caring for a sick family member, having that job security is really important as well.
Thank you, Eric, so much. We really appreciate your in-depth discussion now on our new paid family leave, and we know that you'll continue to work on it. And I want to thank those who have watched the program today for watching, learning more about family leave, but also if you have any questions, don't hesitate calling me at my office, 914-941-1111. Thanks you so very much for watching. Have a good evening.